and get ready to listen to that in just a moment. But while you're finding that, I'm going to start, in fact, first with Governor Velarde and ask you, how do you react to what you just heard from James? Because I said earlier, the Central Bank of Peru has done a quite remarkable job, and you've won a lot of acclaim across the continent for maintaining an impressive level of monetary stability even amid extraordinary political and economic turmoil. So I think many people are asking, how have you managed to do that? But as somebody who's not actually in the government per se, how do you try to frame this challenge of creating some certainty in these uncertain times? And what to you is a key thing needed to create more investment and productivity, as the thought we just heard from James?
Well, thank you for the question. I'm not so sure about, I agree completely with what you have said. It depends on the countries. Actually, Latin America this century has grown a little more than 2%, but had three bigger economies have grown very little. The other countries had not done so bad, not so good, but not so bad. Mexico grew 1.7%, Brazil a little more than 2%, Argentina a little more than 2%, Peru more than 4%, Colombia, Chile close to 4%, actually. So it has not been so different. I'm not so sure about uncertainty. An American producer, he doesn't know what tariff he is going to face for inputs. Somebody that is selling imported consumer goods doesn't know what is going to be the tariff at the end. They has changed more the taxes than other countries. In our case, we have maintained the same rules for taxes to enterprises in 1992. A small change in 2016, but basically the same. Our economy is pretty open. Our tariff at 0.8. The problem, we trusted in rule of law and the treaties we have signed. We have a treaty with the states. You were talking about Mercosur. We have a free trade agreement with the states that was approved by Congress and supposedly should have been changed only by American Congress. But we have seen we have neutralities. So I don't see if our uncertainty is much higher than other countries. We have had 9 presidents. The exchange rate almost has not moved. It moved 1% one day, then it corrects the next day. The yield of the bonds has been pretty stable. So in spite of the political volatility, actually our growth has not been so bad. So I'm not so sure if that is shared by everybody. Reforms, there are that. Of course, one institution, it was mentioned here, macro stability has been here. We have independent central banks. And we have seen very strong critiques to some of these more important central banks. And the governors have continued their independent monetary policy, in spite of the critiques coming from the president. And in spite of some countries having now a little more inflation than before, I would say compared to the 70s, 80s, even early 90s, the situation is much better. And one of the factors that probably has been behind the low growth of Latin America compared to Asia has been macro instability, 70s, 80s, with these big fiscal deficits, inflation, etc. So the situation is not good, but it's not so bad. Well, we have to build our institutions.
Right.
The presence of the state around the country, better civil service, better education. Some of the countries that had the best education, some of the world actually, now they were in these exams, they have very low grades. And I believe if you have a good educated population, you will be prosperous at the end.
Right.
But you have to invest in that, no?
Right.
I have talked too much, maybe.
Right. Well, thank you. And you make a very good point about relative policy stability, because people used to look at Latin America as in place of policy uncertainty. And these days, by comparison with others, you're looking like a bastion of predictability in many ways. But